Hello guys, and welcome back to Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group's UCMC podcast, where our analysts, convene to delve into the realms of Russian disinformation, propaganda, and the influence of hybrid warfare in 2024. In these succinct podcast episodes, the team explores recent observations and analysis, sharing expert opinions and conclusions on the prevailing challenges within the information sphere today. In episode 4, we are joined by HWAG analyst Nastya, my colleague, who can pronounce her Ukrainian name much better than I. So Nastya, please introduce yourself for the listeners today.
Anastasiia Ratieieva.
Nastya, thank you for coming back on. This is the second episode that we've recorded together. Today we're going to discuss your most recent article, Cinematic Propaganda on the Kremlin's Hound on a Tight Leash. I love the name, first of all. I definitely want to explore this more with you. Question one, which I've got for you, is how effective is Russia's cinematic propaganda in shaping public opinion and politics through disinformation narratives? Is it effective?
Actually, there are no clear studies on this topic, but there are two facts that we can correlate. The first is that Russian movie and series production serves the aims of the Kremlin regime. There are a lot of cultural products that serve to blur the borders between post-Soviet states, culturally integrate the occupied territories, glorify war criminals, etc., etc., etc. Also, Russian cinematic propaganda is actively disseminated through various channels, festivals, organized screenings, promotions through mainstream media. And there is another fact. The percentage of Russian support in the war was 73% in November 2023. It's fresh data. And there is an opinion that this may testify more about conformism rather than active support for the war, even though that differentiation is not helping us much. But there is a question, what brings people to conformism, if not such soft forces, soft power as the cinema they consume, the cinema their children forced to watch in school. So, answering your question, pretty effective, I suppose.
Interesting. I mean, it comes back to that question which we always ask, is there such a thing as a good Russian? 73% is a huge statistics of people actually supporting the war, though. So that question is definitely one which we already know the answer to. Nastya, let's talk about some of the material that you use to analyze in your article. One of them, which I really want to focus on today, is the film Donbass Recognized. How does the Kremlin's depiction of Donbass residents as fringe Russians fit within its narrative of Ukrainian non-existence? And what are kind of the strategic aims are used for this narrative in order to, serve their conflict, their war in Ukraine?
Important to mention that Donbass Recognized is a pseudo-documentary film, depicting those points of view and positions that benefit the Kremlin. In this film, Donbass residents are called fringe Russians, as you said before, which means that the entire territory of Ukraine, west of Donbass, is not Russian. However, this is just lack of care and an outdated tune, because now Kremlin propaganda hysterically says that in general, all of Ukraine is inhabited by Russian people. And Russia uses the narrative of shared cultural and historical ties to justify its intervention in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. By presenting Donbass residents as an integral part of the Russian world, the Kremlin seeks to legitimize its involvement as protecting the interest of ethnic Russians. In a recent Tucker Carlson interview with Putin, the Russian dictator shared with the world his crazy, insane beliefs about alternative history, and it has become an explanation to those who do not know the real history of Ukraine. And let's imagine some people are interested in those ideas. They go to Google and search for some proof. And they can find many documentary films. Wow, documentary films which depict the actual reality in which real people mirror those wild ideas. So, by mass producing films like Donbass Recognized, the Kremlin increases the amount of content that reinforces, supports its alternative reality.
Tell me more about this film festivals part of the article. You've got the film festivals like the Time of Heroes festival play. You've got them disseminating Kremlin-driven disinformation narratives. How do they influence on public opinion, domestically and internationally? Does it internationally?
Yes, it does. And the Kremlin actively uses film festivals to create the illusion of international coverage for its film propaganda. They are an effective channel of distribution because they are free to attend and take place across Russia. Furthermore, festivals serve as a springboard for further dissemination. For example, films from the Heroes of the Great Country Festival were shown to students and several educational institutions, including the Suvorov School.
Mm-hmm.
Conspiracy theories, alternative truths, and complete absurdity are presented to the audience under the guise of documentary. The Time of Heroes Festival shortlist includes the film Armed Barons of Ukraine, in which, again, documentary film, in which the authors investigate the smuggling of weapons supplied by the West to Ukraine to hotspots around the world. Just absurd. In general, the festival's films explore all aspects of the Kremlin's alternative reality. This includes the narrative Kiev wants to destroy the Orthodox faith, children's eyewitnesses, 8 years of shelling in Donbass, and much, much more. Some festivals, as was mentioned, are international, just like documentary, although they can only be called so in name. But the fact remains, with the help of Russian citizens, films permeated with the Kremlin's rhetoric are created in countries around the world.
And Nastasiia, tell me about the counterstrategies that can be deployed to combat this disinformation propagated through state-funded cinematic productions. Because obviously, if it is, as you're saying, it's internationally pushed, how can international governments, institutions, how can they counter the manipulation and disinformation pushed through these processes?
Actually, there is no such problem in countering because why we hear as many non-government organization and collaboration between it can provide the decisions. And in Ukraine, we can start collaboration with social media platforms to identify and restrict the dissemination of disinformation. Such practices have already been implemented in Ukraine when pirate sites that provided access to Russian films and TV series were restricted. Also, implementation algorithms and policies that flag or limit the reach of content promoting false narratives may be integrated. Also, there is variant of establishment guidelines for international film festivals to ensure a rigorous selection process that screens out films promoting propaganda and disinformation. And discussion about limiting Russian cultural influence are required, both in Ukraine as part of the wartime response to hybrid threats and around the world. A further in-depth research on the subject could provide a foundation for justifying the need for sanctions against Russia, including in the cultural sphere. But that all must start with a broader discussion and stopping tolerating Russian cultural products for now, both in Ukraine and around the world.